Hi there. So we are today looking at a subject which has absolutely fascinated me for years, which is to do with manifestation. And I have some challenges, let me put it like that, in relation to it. And it's not that it's wrong necessarily, but just some things that come up. Uh, I'm Simon Berkowitz. My interest really is in helping people I work with experience their authentic self-esteem and also their authentic self-expression. That's really what I do with people. And I'm here today with Liesl Tevesham, and her work is focused on helping sensitive introverts. Um, I think there's probably you can say a little bit, Liesl, about the specific work that you do, if you're happy
Mm,
to just in a word or two.
Thanks, Simon. Yes, it's sort of broad in a way with sensitive introverts because they come with many different issues, and whatever they come with, we can help them with EFT that helps work through the emotional challenges and finding their strengths because often they don't believe that they've got strengths. They've been told that they're too weak or too sensitive or too this or too that. So I love introducing them to their strengths.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you. And obviously, as part of that, both of us, part of our work, we want to help people to start to shape their lives the way they want it to be. And Liesl and I were talking the other day, and I had had this experience of reading a post from somebody who's done very well, talking about manifestation. And so as we were talking about it, I realized that it's something I've really had a struggle with over the years. And I'll outline that a little bit in the moment, but that's really the background for it. And the challenge is this, or one way of looking at the challenge is that there can be this desire to present and only think about the way we want things to be. That happens to the exclusion of all else. Like I've got to rid my mind, rid my thinking, just hold this vision of how things should be the whole time. And firstly, the challenge for me is that although there are benefits and it can work well in certain ways, um, there are always challenges coming up. In my experience, it's not a smooth, easy ride to whatever it is that I want to create. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that it can be like overriding part of ourselves to kind of force this vision of reality into place. So that's really the challenge. And Lisa and I just felt like we wanted to have a chat about it, and perhaps we'll get some further understanding about it, and maybe it'll be useful for you too. So, Liesl, any thoughts in relation to that sort of frame that I've just set up?
Simon, this is also a great question. So glad we're exploring this because it's something I've been pondering for a very long time as well. In that, when somebody goes, "Oh, my life is so amazing," or the coaches who have their beach business and they're sitting there and it's just all glorious and like, wow, where the problem is in that life. There's a kind of a I would call it a resistance or some feelings that come up in me that make it very hard for me to strive for that. That sort of like a kind of a resistance, like, nah, that can't be true. And so it just doesn't work for me to just hear about all the wonderful stuff. That's in the first place a hard part. And then when people say to me, well, just focus there. Of course, I know that where well, where attention goes, energy flows. So that's a part of my thinking. It's like it does work like that. But to deny the parts of me that says my life is not like that right now, I'm sitting in the doldrums or I'm having a really crazy hard time. I cannot get my thoughts to focus on something so far out of my reach right now. It all of that just brings up resistance. So I think there's so much to this topic.
Yeah, so it sounds like the first point is in relation to your experience of seeing other people presenting themselves in this way. You
Hmm.
know, you gave the example of coaches.
Yeah.
And I guess in a way that perhaps relates to this way that social media works now in our world
Mm.
very strongly of having to present a particular kind of image. So there's that side of things. And I suppose in a way what it brings to mind for me is there is a choice in how far I mimic or follow other people, that for me with that. And then the second part, this is the bit which I is so meaty for me, which is, how do I attend to those parts which are struggling? How do I do that? I mean, I have some ideas for myself. I'd love to hear perhaps how you attend to those parts and hold that vision at the same time. How do you manage it?
It's very important for me to firstly be able to acknowledge that what I'm feeling is okay to feel.
Yeah.
That it's real. This is my experience right now, and no matter how anybody else would have experienced this, this is my authentic experience, and it's okay for me to have my feelings.
Yeah.
When there's somebody who says to me, no, but just think about it like this, or just do this, and you'll be able to think differently. Gosh, that doesn't work for me. So I need to be able to really truly go and say to myself, this it's okay. I'm feeling really stressed or really anxious or really judged right now or rejected or whatever it is right now, and I need to be able to well, just love myself anyway. And that of course has come not in like in a flash of insight. It's come over many years of practicing and failing and not getting it right, and going coaching with people like you, and just being with the pieces that are like they are right now, not judging them from the inside. And it takes practice. It's not something that just happens overnight.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's certainly what I've found to be really important is this acceptance of what's there. That I actually, just before as we were setting up for this call, we both had a struggle with our lighting. And I've had several technological issues this morning in various meetings. And how to actually manage that, there is an acceptance that one has to be, that this is actually the reality now.
Yes.
And for me, that's been extremely transformative when I think of the challenges that I've faced just personally in my life. The times where I've been in denial of it, they have not been successful periods of my life. They really haven't, big or small. That bit of just trying to force something into a different shape just hasn't worked. It is something to do with being in touch with what's really there. That seems to make a big difference. The bit which I'm absolutely fascinated by is then, how do we then move towards that vision? How do we actually validate what's going on, validate what's there in the present moment, hold ourselves effectively in a way that's kind and compassionate, and then reach towards something bigger?
Well, it's such a huge question, and always what comes up for me is the tools that are much loved for me, because that is how I do it. And there may be so many different tools to help ourselves move gradually, step by step. And I think one of the keys here for me is that we do it small step at a time. It may not come in one big leap, because it's the distance between 0 and where we want to go is too far. We can't go in one big leap. So to move in many steps, for me, it works to pull out each of the emotions that I'm feeling, what is really real for me, and to work with it with a tool like EFT. And just what EFT does for me is it helps me to really name each emotion and be present with it and give it some air and space and light, and give it a chance to really be with me in the space with no judgment of it shouldn't be here. And then, work through the tapping points to help it to release. So for me, it's often a very slow, gradual process of letting go of the emotions. And then what starts happening for me is naturally, with no forcing, no trying hard, some more positive future images or vision or can show up without any forcing. And I think that's the key for me, is because I have not been able to force it.
Yes, that's fascinating. So it's using some tool. For you, it's EFT. For me, it would be probably working with the nervous system and the senses to actually process what's going on with those felt experiences in relation to that particular time or issue or whatever it is.
Mm.
And then something else with the working through of that, so it seems to come through. Does that match what you're
You
saying?
said it beautifully. Yes. It
Yeah.
seems to come through by itself.
Yeah.
It's not like we have to, as human or as the conscious part of our brain, have to force it
Yeah.
to show up somehow. It comes through naturally. It's like a different thing that can show up through us.
Yeah. I mean, that totally meshes with how I see things. And because for me, that creative impulse, which is where our best ideas and inspired actions come from, that creative impulse, it's there waiting to emerge, waiting to come out, waiting to support us in the direction we want to go. And it really is about clearing away whatever has been stopping that from actually emerging in that way. So the bit also that you said, which I found so fascinating, was these little steps.
Mm-hmm.
And what came to mind, there's an expression which you've probably heard. It's something like, if you shoot for the moon, you'll reach the...
Oh, if you shoot for the stars, you'll reach the moon, I
Something
think.
like that. Yeah,
Yes,
that's it.
yes, yes.
And it's I get the logic of it, because it's the opposite of what you're saying. It's instead of working from where we
Wow.
are, and yeah, it's like, if I go for the biggest goal possible, then it'll get me somewhere in that direction. And it makes a logical sense to me, but it just feels so harsh. And what I liked about how you put it is, if you do these small things, and attend to what emerges at those various points, what I noticed going on in my system was I just kind of settled somewhat, just felt myself,
Mm,
oh, that feels so much more. Whereas the shooting for the stars it brings up stress in me,
yeah.
immediately.
Yeah, I like that that you highlighted that, Simon. It's a big thing. I Because I work with introverts specifically, it's a very big thing in an introvert's life. Is the comfort zone is relatively, I don't want to say small for everybody, but it's a place where introverts don't move out of that comfort zone very easily. So I've seen it so much with my clients that it is far easier to go towards um a big goal if we break it down into small enough steps that it stretches out maybe 25%, but not 100% or 200%. Introverts have different strengths than extroverts. There are
Yeah.
some extroverts who have the strengths to be able to shoot for the stars and actually maybe reach the stars all in one go, because they have different strengths and different qualities to them. I'm not saying introverts can't reach the stars, but we do it in a different way. And that small bits just give us the confidence and the belief and oh, my nervous system can relax into this piece here and then into the next piece. So just step by step, that's the way that I see it work.
Yeah. So then, how do you work with vision then, for somebody? I mean, do you? Maybe you don't work with vision in your practice, because there are so many different ways to work with people. But if
Yes.
you do, how do you think about having a vision that you're moving towards? How you embody that?
I must say it's something that doesn't come up for me as
Mm,
naturally and as easily as for some people, because I don't have the strength that helps me to see a future vision very easily. Some people have a strength called futuristic that makes it really, that's the way they operate. They have a vision and they start from that. And that's what carries them forward.
Mm.
My futuristic is on the lower side. So it doesn't come up naturally for me. But just this morning in a session, it popped up for me because I heard the client say, well, previously how they got somewhere was to have to keep the strong vision. So I thought, well, for this client, it's going to work. So
Mm.
I said to her, homework this week is to brainstorm what is the vision for this next piece that she wants to hold. So I think that's the way I work with visions. When I see it's a person that's going to be able to hold the vision,
Yeah.
um, I don't do it with everybody because not everybody finds it naturally easy.
Mm. I mean, it's interesting that you say that, because I know for myself, my ability to work with visions has completely changed
Hmm.
over time, and I would have put myself as somebody who's really struggling, but now it's actually very much part of my everyday, which is why,
Right.
partly why I'm interested in this question of the whole manifestation side of things.
Mhm.
Um,
So say a bit about how it's changed for you and how do you use it now?
well, I think the I made a big distinction for myself between the dream and the practical. And for myself, I find that having the dream and being able to really move into playing with that is, for me, feels enlivening, feels creative. It's fun, sort of playing with these different things. And it's almost like that becomes fuel.
Mhm.
It's like a fuel for things. But what I think I used to get caught by was that it would be this is a magical thing with a wonderful house and a beautiful this and a wonderful that and everything. And then I'd start to sort of put the plan in place, and
Nowhere near.
it's just like, forget shooting for the stars. It was shooting for the next rung on the step ladder. It
Right.
wasn't even, it's just ridiculous. So I think realizing that, for me at least, being really clear on separating out this kind of, even as I think about it now, I can feel myself start to get excited by it. How wonderful to have that way to help my state to shift
Mm.
in some way. And then I have a sort of lower level kind of vision, so to speak, which is more to do with the practicalities, which is more like the aim, the direction that I want to go in. It's still not really, really concrete,
Mhm.
but it's a kind of general direction that I can move towards, which is more attainable, which is in the direction of that vision. And then still below that, I have goals. Sounds very, very organized. And in the explanation, it's very organized. In the practice, it's a bit more fluid. But then I have goals, which are collections of results almost, which are, again, taking me towards that direction, taking me
Mm.
in that direction. And then I have specific actions. So I've kind of broken it down quite clearly for myself. There's a million and one ways to do things. That just makes sense to me, because it means that I can have the pleasure of the vision in its fullness.
Mm.
I can visualize a pink sky or an orange sky in my vision. It's fine. It's a vision. It's my area to do that. But for me to actually get anything done, I need very clear, simple actions. And
Mm.
this way of organizing it seems to make it all line up fairly well for me. Then there's another piece to it, which is very much to do with the management of how I'm feeling,
Mhm.
and being able to really somehow be able to acknowledge what's going on and still hold this thing which is possible,
Right.
you know. And when I say possible, that's more the aims, the sort of the direction. The vision may be possible, but who knows whether that's going to going to happen or not. But to be able to hold that, because what I've found, and this is one of the biggest challenges, is that my vision can actually, as we spoke to earlier, can actually trigger me. If I,
Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
if I'm in that wrong state of mind, or it just catches me wrong, then I don't even want to think about it, because it's too, oh my word, what a terrible person I am, or this, or I failed, or that, or the other.
Yeah.
And this is really that sweet spot, which is why we're talking today, because the manifestation thing does seem to be about holding that vision. And there's actually whole medical approaches for medical conditions that work on this basis. Just hold the vision of yourself as fit and healthy now.
Mm.
And you can't think yourself out of some things, you know?
Mm.
So that's it in a nutshell. That's how I've been working with that vision piece.
I love that. I absolutely love that. So when I'm almost hearing in that how you described it, there's almost like the permission that you gave yourself to have a vision that's vastly different
Yeah.
to reality right now. And then these other levels, like it's sort of step down, or you can call it step up from here or step down from there, is ways that it's holding lightly to the bigger vision,
Yeah.
allowing yourself to play with it and like, oh, wouldn't that be nice? That's the ultimate, like that's the fun, dreamy, um, the place where we can dream whatever we want. It's like a child's magical world. We can have that. And then we just need to sort of tone it down a little bit for reality. At every step, there's a different level where you can function within that
Yeah.
and still have the vision without feeling, oh, I'm so nowhere near that. And then you've got the way to manage your emotional state, because inevitably this morning, we can get up and it's like, oh, this is a terrible day. I had a terrible night's sleep. I don't want to do all the work that I wanted to do in order to reach my vision. So you say you've got ways to manage those emotional states when they do arrive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the main things for me is that I feel much more. I'm just thinking, there was a phrase which came to me. I don't think it was quite this, but I'm accepting of myself as perfectly imperfect. So
Yes.
what that means is that I'm going to have days when I feel pretty lousy, and that's okay. So
Right.
it's really okay. It doesn't mean anything. And I think one of the mistakes I've made in the past is actually to think that because I don't feel so great, or this didn't work out the way I wanted, or that person didn't respond in the way I wanted, that it actually necessarily has to mean anything
Yeah.
beyond really giving me feedback on something.
Right.
My
Right.
emotional state gives me feedback on something about maybe how my body is working today, maybe how my evening was, or my sleep was, or maybe how I didn't actually do the normal setup I might do for my day. Who knows what?
Mm,
But it's given me information, and it feels like a much kinder way to work with myself by doing that.
yes.
Yeah.
I love that, Simon. I feel how it brings in like a softness and a compassion. And I have found so often that when we can bring kindness and compassion to something, the whole thing transforms. It's like, even if I'm going through the most, because I get anxiety, and we've worked with it together. When I, even in the most anxious times, instead of judging myself, or I should be over this by now, just going, oh my goodness, gee whiz, I'm feeling
Yeah.
so anxious, and that's okay. Can I just give myself a hug? And in that moment, things start lightening up, and it changes. So
Yeah.
when we can work with our emotions in that way, it changes the whole way that things can pan out.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I feel it's kind of a good point, maybe, to just sort of see if anything's come to mind for you
Hmm.
around this kind of initial vague framing around the manifestation type thing. You had two points that you brought up. The first was in relation to seeing other people, who are presenting in a particular kind of way about their amazing lives and this sort of thing. And then the other was more to do with what we've been talking about, how to manage it for oneself. Is there anything that's come to mind through the course of our conversation?
Just something that popped up for me right now is I think I can count on the one, there's people that say, hold the vision above all else. If you can just sort of rise above everything and just hold the vision and just believe and trust that it'll still work out, then you'll be fine. And that's the point that's always like, oh, given me a huge resistance in my chest. Like, but I'm not feeling like that. How can I hold the vision when these feelings are on the way? But I've probably had two experiences in my life ever of being able to still be in the place where I know it's going to work out,
Mm,
even though I have no idea how. And the last one was about a week ago
wow.
when something was going really wrong for my mom, and I forget the circumstances now, but I oh I had to try and help her with some bank account stuff, and it's almost impossible stuff to get right from the UK to South Africa. And I just had this trust in my whole being that was completely inexplicable to me because that's not the way my brain usually works. I just had this complete trust, like I know it's going to work out. I don't know how because it looks completely impossible.
Mm,
Now, I wish I could bottle that feeling and, take it with me for every new challenge in my life because I don't know how I got to that. It was just almost like grace
yeah.
that showed up for me. It wasn't me that sat there and thought, I'm going to hold the vision, I'm going to trust. It wasn't. It was just there. So I don't know what that is about. And oh, I so wish I could find out what happened. What
Mm.
was that? How did that come about? Because that's the kind of place that I can understand that people say just hold the vision. It just came. It wasn't me trying hard.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, that is that specific place that I think people are talking about in that law of manifestation stuff, that
Mm,
whole abundance piece is this kind of state that we get into. And I find it interesting that you talk about grace,
mhm.
because for me, that grace that you're talking about, I know it's used in religious
Yeah.
terms a lot. I think of it very much in terms of that creative opening that happens when, for some reason, and it can be in a time of stress, or it can be in a time of great relaxation, or it can be, all sorts. There's just this kind of opening into recognition of my own clarity. I mean, just as an aside, that's very much how I work with authentic self-esteem, because
Mhm.
it's about how can we actually create the conditions which allow more possibility for that particular state that you're talking about to arise. So, there's that crossover. I think the difference with the manifestation is that there is this idea that I am making it happen. Maybe that's the piece that I balk against. And although on the one level I am making it happen because it's happening within the sphere of my experience, it's not the I that is putting itself up as, the superstar. And maybe that's I wonder if that's the thing for me, because the experience you spoke about was almost like something in you coming forward, right? And I didn't hear you saying, I did this, or whatever it was. Sorry about that rather
Mm.
bizarre body language. But you didn't do a thing,
Yes.
but this part kind of, or this experience, or this self came forward. And that's very different from I am creating this vision and I'm going to make the world according to how I see it. Maybe
Yeah.
that's I think that's really, really helpful actually for me,
Yeah, well,
because
it's super helpful for me because I've
um,
not really thought about it very carefully. And now that you say this, I think that is exactly it. Is it was not the conscious me, the conscious part of me, the one that sets goals, the
yeah,
part of me that analyzes and plans and all of that. It was not that part. that came through there. It's something else that came through that was no trying hard. It was like something that just showed up and showed me what was possible. Yeah.
And what's so interesting about that is that can only really happen if you have that compassion towards yourself that you're talking about, and that you intend to yourself in its many movements in the way that you were talking about. It's not, I don't, you can get something which maybe looks like it, but I don't know that it necessarily has that kind of same quality unless it emerges, because you've effectively, it's a very humble place to come from, isn't it?
Mm,
Yeah, I think so.
yes, yes, yes. I think it is. It's because it's not a it's not a me place. It yeah, it allows. It's almost it was a place that allowed for something else to show up
Yeah.
without I'm going to make this happen. And I don't. Again, it's like what happened there? I don't know how it happened. Um, but thank God that was possible
Yeah.
because I've got another frame of reference now.
Yeah. Yeah.
That manifestation can happen in that kind of way, but then is it really, how does these two worlds come together where the conscious us want to manifest something and set goals and say, I'm going to do this. And yet it's not the conscious us that comes through like this kind of experience that I had.
Yeah. Well, I guess possibly what we may need to do is have another conversation with a manifestation expert. I mean, there is another thread which comes to mind, another time, which comes to mind, which is there was a book by Professor John Wiseman. I love the book. He did this research into luck. And he actually, which was a bit naughty, he based it on somebody else's book and didn't credit them, which is naughty, but the book is itself is very good. And he talks about these factors which go into making luck. And one of them is positive expectations.
Right.
And the way that ripples out into our life as micro decisions, as how our state is and how we show up when we're in, I walk into an interview and I'm the best person for this job.
Mm-hmm.
That whole body language changes, my voice changes, how I speak, so in a way I can see that as a component of this whole manifestation piece. And it has to be, for me anyway, it really has to be authentic. Come from a place of, and there are very, we can't be, authenticity is a multifaceted subject in a way, but what I mean is towards the more truthful place in us. And then if from there that can ripple out. And so I think what part of the reason I'm sharing that piece is because I think that helps me to find a way to work with this vision in a way that doesn't feel like it's a denial of what I may be experiencing, a denial of those parts that you've spoken to so beautifully, because I can attend to them and I can still hold positive expectations and embody those expectations and use my vision as a way to actually be a shining light and then a practical direction and then, actions and all these other things. And then perhaps I can allow the me who gets so caught up in details and caught up in the mess and the negative side of things to actually let go and let something more of what you're talking about in this recent experience come through.
I love that. I really do. I love the frame of positive expectation. That's so different than I think all the layers that's been put on top of manifestation, right?
Yeah.
Positive expectation just feels almost like lighthearted.
Yeah.
And it's almost with that kind of lighthearted feeling that it feels easier to move in a direction. It's with less expectation of exactly how it should work out. This positive expectation is full. It's like the word curiosity.
Yeah.
Going there with that kind of feeling. Like, I wonder how well this could work out.
Yeah. Feels more spacious, doesn't it?
Yes, yes, it instantly helps you to feel like, "Oh, I can breathe within that."
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing that piece about the book. I bet that's going to
Mm.
be something that I need to investigate further. So what's it about luck?
The Luck Factor
The
by
luck factor.
Professor John Wiseman. It's an interesting book. It's a very, very interesting. He brings it down to a few variables which make a difference.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much. I feel so, I feel so much clearer. I hope it's been useful for anybody who's been watching. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share, Liesl?
Uh, no, Simon, I think just, I just loved so much about this conversation, and I hope there's something useful for those who took the time to listen. Thank you for listening. This is my good friend Simon. We've come quite a while
Known each other a
together
long
and have
time.
had many awesome conversations that I'd wished were recorded, and now we are recording
Yeah.
one.
We've got this one. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Thanks, Simon. It was
yeah.
really profoundly deep and thoughtfully satisfying for me.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Liesl. It's been great to speak about this with you today.